Today I'm really excited because I'm going to visit Freud's house. For a little bit of context, my name is Kathleen, I'm a psychologist and I'm hanging out in London. And today's the perfect day to go and check this out. We've just arrived in Hampstead Heath, walking towards Freud's house. Although he lived most of his life in Vienna, because of the war in 1938, he had to move to London and he died a year later. But he brought with him to London his office and he set it up in this house, which we're gonna check out. It's quite funny to imagine that Freud likely walked around these same streets. It's really surreal. We're walking down the road now that leads towards Freud's house. He began in medicine, studying neurology. He then went on to Paris and studied with someone whose name I will mispronounce. It was something like Jean-Martin Charcot, who had a big impact on Freud professionally, influencing him around hysteria and hypnosis and showing him his techniques. Freud then went back to Vienna, where he collaborated with someone called Joseph Breuer, and together they used what they call talk therapy to relieve clients of their symptoms. Before we go on inside, I think it is worth mentioning that Freud is really significant to psychology because of his contributions to psychoanalysis, which is like a specific domain under the psychology umbrella. Freud's work was really important in helping us understand the unconscious mind. I know he does get a little bit of a dodgy rap because of some of his theories relating to sex, but he's a really interesting character. And when I was researching him a bit more, I was just intrigued. So I'm very excited to finally get to go into this house and share my reactions to this. I just read that Freud's study actually overlooked this garden and he enjoyed looking at the roses, which was like a particular pleasure for him because his house in Vienna only had a small courtyard. Right now I'm standing in the dining room where Freud and his family used to have like their family meals together. It was in this room. Freud would always have lunch every day at 1 o'clock. He'd take a break from 1 to 3 p.m. and spend that time with his family. Here Freud is behind me. Freud's creation of psychoanalysis introduced new ways of thinking about the mind, mental disorders, and also therapeutic techniques. His approach emphasized the importance of unconscious processes, childhood experiences, and also talk therapy. This new approach that he essentially pioneered. Apparently, Freud's study has been preserved just as it was during his lifetime. I think as a psychologist, something that I find quite interesting about Freud is his routine. I read that apparently he would wake up at around 7 and start his job at 8 a.m. on the dot. He would see clients from 8 a.m. till 1 p.m., 55-minute sessions each, 5 minutes for like notes or I don't know, setting up for the next client. Then he'd have like a couple of hours lunch break and then he'd get right back into it and he would work from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. seeing I guess 6 more clients. That's a day of 11 or 12 clients a day doing talk therapy. It just like, I struggle with 6 clients a day. That for me is my cap. I can't imagine how he managed to do that. Not only that, afterwards, 9 o'clock he'd have his dinner and then he'd continue working through the night. He wouldn't go to bed before 1 a.m. apparently, which I don't know how good that is for your health, but that was his routine and you can see his devotion to this work. It's just incredible. The other cool thing about being in this room is his other interests like archaeology and architecture and different periods of history like ancient Egypt. You can see all the different artifacts and pieces in his room that were important to him. I overheard someone saying that Freud is like the live Indiana Jones, and it's kind of true. Like this room is just filled with artifacts, and this video that I'm making just doesn't do this experience justice. It is incredible to be in this room and I strongly recommend visiting if you're in London. This was Anna Freud's therapy room. She was Freud's daughter and she was a child psychoanalyst, so she specialised working with children. And I just read a sign that said she used to let children wander freely, and if a child was rolling around on the floor, she would do the same, which I think is a really nice way to build rapport with someone. I just saw too that Marilyn Monroe had an interest in Freud, and she actually visited Anna Freud for some help in the 1950s at some point. That is quite interesting. There's so much to take in as well in this museum. I am definitely not doing this justice. I'm just scraping the surface, giving you an introduction or like a taste test. It's truly a fascinating place to visit. I don't think I have the right words to sum up that experience and do it justice. It was so interesting. There was a lot to take in, and I want to kind of leave it with one final thing. It was just a sign written in the house that said Freud was one of the first psychologists to place a lot of emphasis on talking to people in a non-judgmental, confidential way, helping them feel secure to freely express themselves and open up. And I just think that is so important. Like, obviously now we know that is one of the pillars of therapy, making space for people to just authentically be themselves and let their emotions out and not feel a sense of being judged or being looked at negatively. Like, there's something really liberating about having the space to do that with a fellow human being. It is something I feel very passionately about in my therapeutic approach. I think that space and that connection that you hold with a person, that therapeutic relationship, I think it is, dare I say, the most important thing between a client and a therapist in helping them understand themselves and work towards being the type of person they want to be. So that was my journey, my day at Freud's Museum House. Also, a sneaky plug for the channel. My videos are about psychology, so please come and check it out. And you can also find me on Instagram. My name is Kathleen.ann.psychologist. So hopefully I'll see you around there, where I share what life is like working as a psychologist. I can't recommend that enough. That was a really fun experience. If you're in London, you should absolutely do it. I hope you have an amazing week. I'll talk to you in another episode soon. Bye!